Okay, we're going to give people a few minutes to gather here, but we are going to give you also an opportunity to think about a little bit of trivia as we are gathering. So, welcome everyone. I'm Tracy Weatherby. Many of you know me, but you may see there is a different title there. And I think Leslie will speak a little bit to that. But just as of this week, we have restructured our organization. I have been our Vice President of Strategy and Advocacy and have been serving as our Interim Vice President of Programs and Services. And we took a look and decided that those all had to do with impact, and we really wanted to bring those together so that we could have the best collaboration possible for the community. So my official title is now Chief Impact Officer. So both on the program side and the advocacy side, you'll all continue to see a lot of me. If we can go to the next slide, we'll just go ahead and do our trivia questions. The questions are about the number of volunteer hours we had, how many distribution sites we have, and what percent of our clients have less than $100 in savings. And Jenny, do you want to go ahead and start that poll for people to weigh in? So I, as a presenter, cannot see that. Are participants seeing the poll now? We do have a Q&A function. So if one of you participants, okay, thank you. Thank you for putting that in there. You don't see it. Okay, we'll have to see if we can get that launched. It's not a webinar unless we have at least one technical challenge. And if this is the worst one we have, we're in good shape. So I see it now. Hopefully you all see it. I don't get to vote though. I tried, but it doesn't work. All right, we're going to give you just another 10 or 15 seconds to go ahead and vote on the trivia questions, and then we'll give you the answers. Okay, why don't we go ahead and see what the results are looking like on our poll? Nice job, Jenny. Thank you so much. How many hours of volunteer service did we have in 2024? The most popular answer was 290,000 hours. And in terms of how many distribution sites we currently have, the most popular was 900. I know that to be true. And what percent of our clients have less than $100 in savings? And people chose 60%. Can you go ahead and share the actual answers, Jenny? So in 2024, we had over 290,000 hours of volunteer service. And that is the equivalent of, almost, believe it's almost 200 full-time equivalents. So we are so grateful to the community for helping us do this work. Second Harvest of Silicon Valley currently has 900 sites throughout Santa Clara and San Mateo County. And nearly 60% of our clients reported having less than $100 in savings. And this has been a pretty consistent measure over the last 5 years that we've been looking at this. So this really shows the challenge in the community. So thank you so much for participating in that. Welcome to everyone who may have joined since we started. I'm Tracy Weatherby, and I also want to make sure that I give a shout out to Rachel Monaco and Jenny Dang, who are our advocacy team and who have set up this whole event. So thank you so much. And now I'd like to hand it over. If you have questions as we go, please put them in the Q&A box. We'll be monitoring it. If they're kind of in the flow, we'll answer as we go. Otherwise, we'll try and leave a little bit of time for questions at the end. But I want to hand it over to Leslie Baccio, our CEO, to give you some context on our work.
Thanks, Tracy, and thanks to all of you for being here this morning. I have to say, this is an event that I always look forward to, and I just appreciate the opportunity to share a little bit about the state of the food bank with all of you. I want to start by congratulating Tracy on her new role here at Second Harvest. I'm grateful to her for stepping into this Chief Impact Officer role. One thing we recognize is that our work of programs and services and advocacy has always been so closely connected. So this chance to bring them together under one organization and leader has a lot of value strategically. And of course, we're fortunate to have a leader in Tracy who's willing and able to bring this vision to life. I also want to thank all of you for taking the time out of your busy days to be here. I appreciate you prioritizing joining us and learning more about Second Harvest's 2025 policy agenda. I want to start, just for those of you who aren't as familiar with our work, giving you an overview of Second Harvest. So we're the food bank that serves Santa Clara and San Mateo counties. And we have been doing this work for 50 years, more than 50 years. We just had our 50th anniversary. So really any organization that distributes food to those in need in one of our two counties is likely getting most, if not all of that food from Second Harvest free of charge. And I think you can go ahead to a couple of slides, to the next slide after this. All of this work we do in partnership with others, and you can see here this map of partners throughout our two counties. We partner with more than 400 organizations, that's schools, faith-based organizations, community organizations, and many more. We have over 900 distribution sites each month where clients receive food, and of course, they all receive that food at no cost. And in our advocacy work, which is primarily what we'll be talking about today, we work to strengthen programs and policies that help end hunger in our community and address the root causes of hunger. If you could go to the next slide. So this is the framework that represents our current multi-year strategic plan with our mission, our strategic vision, and the 4 strategic goals we're working towards as part of our plan. This plan really recognizes that to end hunger requires us not only meeting the very immediate and urgent need for food assistance, but also making progress on the root causes of hunger. And I have to say, in this moment, staying focused on our mission and values has never felt more important. It would feel inauthentic to have a conversation about policy, the kind of conversation we're having this morning, without acknowledging the challenges we're facing as the new administration begins to communicate and act on its priorities. Of course, at Second Harvest, we are a nonpartisan, non-political, nonprofit organization, yet it's undeniable that some of the administration's directives and orders, particularly those around immigration rights, the threat of ICE activity at food distributions, new limitations on DEI, and the potential impacts of our direct funding and the resourcing of adjacent benefits, those all have the potential to negatively impact our mission. And they certainly threaten some of our most vulnerable communities. In many ways, these last few weeks have felt very reminiscent of the start of the pandemic, when there is just so much uncertainty, there is so much confusion out there, and so much concern. And it has just brought home for me how it makes it even more important to stay laser focused on our mission and values. So one of the first things we did was develop an organizational stance, and you see it here, and just some guiding principles that we could follow as leaders in our response approach. And this is kind of a summarized version of that statement. We've been focused on supporting our partners, clients, and staff, and providing resources that we will help us continue our work to ensure everyone in our community has access to food, and that everyone feels safe, valued, and welcome when they receive food at our sites. And we're doing our best to provide guidance if we do see any ICE activity at our sites, and we have not seen any ICE activity yet. And we're also fortunate to be part of a network of food banks. So both the California Association of Food Banks, Feeding America, but also we work in close partnership with our Bay Area food banks. And we are sharing a lot of resources right now as we navigate through these challenging times. On the next slide, I want to share just a little bit about what we're seeing in the community post-pandemic in terms of need. This chart shows the amount of food we've provided and the number of people who have accessed our services over the last few years. And just a reminder, our fiscal year runs July through June. And you can see how demand for our services literally doubled during the pandemic. And we did see that need go down a little bit, and then we've seen it start to increase again to where we are back up to serving close to the same number of people we served at the height of the pandemic, about 500,000 people every month. And unfortunately, given inflation, given the uncertainties brought by this new administration, we don't see that number going down anytime soon. Next slide. On this slide, you'll see the breakdown of the food that we distribute. We have a big focus on fresh produce. We're so fortunate to be here in California, and about 60% of the food we distribute is fresh produce. And this is something that our clients consistently tell us that they really appreciate. We're able to procure about 80% of the food we distribute through donations, and these are donations at a large scale. So for all of this fresh produce, we literally receive it by the tractor trailer load. We also do a lot of retail rescue, a lot of grocery rescue, and we also do that in partnership with our other nonprofit partners. And fortunately, we only have to purchase about 20% of our food. So you can see how critical this donated food is, and a little less than 10% of that food is federal commodities. In my last few minutes, I want to just underscore the tremendous level of need for our services we continue to see in the community, and I want to be really transparent that funding for our work is not keeping pace with the level of the need. You can see here that even though we're serving 100% more people today than we were before the pandemic, we only have about 60% more funding. And we've really been having to make tough budget choices to get back to a balanced budget. I also want to be clear that with this new administration, there is a very real threat that benefits and services for our neighbors will be cut, which may lead to a further increase in need. And there's also a very real threat that government funding will be cut. Although we're fortunate that we receive little federal funding, we also receive food from the federal government. And even more concerning is that so many of our nonprofit partners who we rely on to hold up this tremendous network of food distributions rely more heavily on government support, and they may see their funding slashed. So this already very fragile safety net may become even more fragile at a time of critical need. We are really fortunate that we have so much community support helping us meet the need. We rely so heavily on private fundraising, but as I often say, hunger in Silicon Valley, it is a solvable problem, but it is absolutely going to take all of us working together to solve it. That's more true today than it's ever been. And I'm grateful to all of you here today for your support, but it makes it more and more important that we have the partnership of our cities, counties, and state to help bridge the gap and join our advocacy efforts. And with that, I'll hand it over to Tracy to share more about how we're approaching doing our work more deeply in community and addressing the root causes of hunger.
Thank you, Leslie. It is sometimes disheartening to think about the landscape we're facing right now. But part of what is giving me hope is this community that we live in here in California, here in the Bay Area, and the fact that we are all pretty much committed, have the same values, and are working towards solving these problems. So if you go to the next slide, I want to talk a little bit about our strategic plan to deepen our efforts in community. During the pandemic, we all had we were just meeting the need. We were moving fast. We were doing whatever we could do to get food out to people. And there were of resources during the pandemic, but especially as we are moving back to a place where there are more limited resources, but there's still this very, very high need. We really want to make an effort to ensure that we are collaborating with all of our partners, with all of our electeds, to ensure that we're all kind of moving in the same direction and working together to solve the need, both for hunger and for other basic needs. One of the things that we have just completed is a new reorganization of how we are managing our area. And we have tried to center our work around very specific communities, very specific neighborhoods. And so over the next year, we're going to be planning to work much more deeply with our partners there, with our electeds there, to make sure that in each of our communities, we understand where the challenges are and how we can meet them together, both in terms of food provision, in terms of access to benefits, and in terms of advocacy around core and root cause issues. So if you go to the next slide, it's just our attempt to try and explain what we are kind of hoping for. It's this opportunity for us to all kind of step back, think through this together. We have such an amazing network of breadth and depth. It's schools, it's faith-based organizations, a lot of other nonprofits and agencies, all our EANs and COREs, advocacy coalitions, our local government. And, we are going to be making a lot more space to participate in existing coalitions and also in cases where there may not be folks looking at a specific neighborhood, really try and ensure that we can create some convenings where we can all be understanding how we can best work together. We know that each of the areas in Silicon Valley has slightly different challenges, and we really want to have the opportunity to identify and advocate for root cause solutions to hunger beyond food provision. So that leads me a little bit to our root cause work. This is something we introduced last year, and we can go to the next slide. We had good point. I'm going to go first over our policy principles. And then I'll talk about root cause. So we have always centered our work around some core policy principles, and these have changed slightly in wording, but they've been pretty much the same over the years. Last year, we did add the one about root causes. And I just want to briefly touch on those because those continue to be real touchstones for us. That first off, the access to nutritious food is a human right, and every member of our community should have the nutritious food they need to thrive. We are also in our policy world always going to be focused on policies that provide access for all. We continue to be committed to looking at our systems and our policies and our practices to ensure that they support diversity and provide equity and inclusion for all. And addressing the root causes of hunger, we want to be able to explore how we can support root cause solutions in areas tied to ending hunger and where our voice can make a difference. We have many partners who are already working on some of these areas, so we won't necessarily be leading, but we want to be a good supporting partner, good thought partner, good connecting partner. And then our community voice matters. We have spent a lot of time supporting nonpartisan efforts at the local, state, and federal levels to increase access to voting and encourage voter registration. We worked with both counties during this last election to get registrars out to our different sites so that our community could get registered to vote where they were eligible and take advantage of their voice in that big election we just had. If you go to the next slide, we did introduce our root cause work last year, and we've been learning over the last year and are going to be continuing to learn. What we wanted to do was identify areas where we may be able to have some access and support for root cause issues, where there would be some impact and where there are coalitions that we can be part of and support. We, like most people, are not growing, so it's a matter of us thoughtfully thinking about where we can participate and how we can support. And so if you go to the next slide, the Three areas that we had identified last year where we wanted to be able to speak out were affordable housing, environmental justice and sustainability, and income and safety net programs. And I'm going to talk just a moment about those. You know, we have gotten more educated on local affordable housing initiatives and have weighed in, signed on to some of the really important efforts going on. Environmental justice and sustainability, in some ways, I think is one of the most local issues. We have communities locally that are concerned about the quality of their water, concerned about the quality of their air. So we've been learning about that area and how we might be able to support or create connections for the people who are already working on those important issues. And then income and safety net programs are really operative at every level of government. You know, at the federal level, it's the child tax credit and the earned income tax credit. It's some of the state supports of our community, and locally, it's a lot of the basic income pilots that we've been monitoring and trying to understand. We have added a new root cause issue given the environment we find ourselves in, which is immigrant rights. And this is not one we felt we needed to add in the past, but as there are threats to our ability to safely distribute food at schools and at churches, and as parts of our community are at threat of being required to leave our community, we feel like this is an area we really need to be able to spend more time. So if you go to the next slide, wanted to kind of give you a structure of how we think about this work. The champion part of our pyramid is where we feel like we have the greatest credibility, the things that are directly related to food and hunger. And these are the areas that we have always spoken out, access to food, support of food as medicine, support of food banks and our partners, community voice, and then also overall immigrant access to the safety net. For instance, Rachel will be speaking later about our work with Food for All, which is a California program to provide a CalFresh-like benefit to undocumented immigrants. Our work on the root cause issues that are a little further from food is typically in coalition. We are supporting others. We are joining together with others to make our voice heard. And then there will be some other areas where we're supporting and monitoring. And if there are root cause issues related to hunger, we may be able to sign on and share our thoughts as well. So if you go to the next slide, I just want to talk a little bit more about the immigrant basic needs and immigrant rights. First off, it's really central to our work and being able to do our work well. Second Harvest provides food to everyone who needs it, regardless of identity, whether it's your documentation status, gender identity, racial or ethnic identity. Everyone is welcome at all of our sites, always. And we never ask for immigration status in the work that we do. So we will continue to strive to make our distribution sites safe and welcoming locations for anyone who needs food. And for instance, with this new ability to speak out on it, we will be advocating, for instance, to make churches and schools safe sites again, because we're concerned that the community will be afraid to come and get the nutrition that they need. We will continue to assist mixed status family in accessing the benefits to which their citizen members are entitled. So that has all been a very core part of our work, always. We also have always been in support of our community's basic needs. We have focused more on food programs, but for instance, we'll be speaking out to make sure that undocumented people can still get access to Medi-Cal. We will be trying to ensure that we're supporting our farm workers who provide so much of the food that we provide to the community. As Leslie said, nearly 60% of what we give out is fresh produce, and farm workers are a fairly major target of this administration, which is going to make food harder to access and more expensive for all. And then we also want to be able to speak out on protection of immigrants who are already in our community. We want to protect our farm workers, our community members without criminal records, from being removed from our community. They are a community, and we want to support them in remaining here and contributing as they always have. We also want to advocate to maintain DACA and stand against family separation because these are things that so directly impact our community. Um, we'll be happy to take some questions on that later. I know these are issues that you're all grappling with. We've been talking to a lot of our partners, and we know that you're seeing the impacts in real time with your staff, with your clients. And so this is something that we'll be looking to really work more deeply with you on. And at this point, I would like to go ahead and pass it on to Rachel Monaco, our Senior Manager of Policy and Advocacy.
Thank you, Tracy. Hi, everyone. I'm Rachel. If you haven't met me, I'm the Senior Manager of Policy and Advocacy here at Second Harvest. Tracy did a really good job taking a high-level overview of the principles that guide our policy work for the year. I'm going to start bringing us down to the action level, so specific policies that we are going to be supporting this year. Next slide, Jenny. Thank you. Number one, and probably the single most important package of legislation that we will be following this year is the Farm Bill. I like this chart because it showcases a frequent misconception about what the Farm Bill is and what is included in it. It has the name Farm Bill, but more than 80% of the funding that is directed through the Farm Bill process goes to support nutrition programs. And 80% of that goes to SNAP, which is CalFresh here in California. So anytime there are updates to Farm Bill is the chance to improve or reduce benefits that are available to people who are receiving SNAP. The other 2% of the funding that supports nutrition programs goes to support things like the Emergency Food Assistance Program, which is TFAP. Leslie mentioned the federal commodities that we receive. That is an absolute cornerstone part of our food sourcing, and that comes through the Farm Bill process as well. The other 18% of the funding in Farm Bill goes to support things that you might think of when you hear the words Farm Bill. It's support for farmers, it's support for farmland conservation, and many other things in between. Next slide, please. So some specific areas that we are following related to CalFresh this year, again, with this backdrop that there are very real threats to SNAP or CalFresh at the federal level in conversations happening right now, today. Actually, just a couple of days ago, the House of Representatives passed a budget resolution which proposes significantly reducing benefit programs, including SNAP. So these are definitely things to keep a very close eye on, both for us and for all of you as you work to serve your community. But it's not going to stop us from pushing for better things, right? So we will obviously oppose any options to reduce or restrict SNAP CalFresh benefits in any possible way. In fact, we want to see an increase in benefits. Some of you may know that a single individual may be eligible for as little as $23 a month in CalFresh benefits. We do not think that is enough money. You go to the grocery store to buy food for your family, how far can you get on $23? Not very far. So we're definitely in strong support of efforts to increase that minimum benefit amount and benefits in general. We also want to see expanded eligibility. I'm going to talk about Food for All, like Tracy mentioned, but also for populations like college students, as well as people who are leaving incarceration and returning to their communities. These specific demographics have restrictions on their eligibility for CalFresh that is only tied to them, only these specific populations. We would like to see those barriers taken down so that they're able to get the help that they need as well. We also want to see improved access. And by access, we mean we want individuals to be able to apply for CalFresh benefits over the phone or online, as well as be able to complete their interviews or other follow-up requirements in a way that is accessible to them. Sometimes people have disabilities, they don't have transportation, and it's really, really hard for them to get to an in-person interview. So having more options for them would really help them maintain their benefits. And finally, we want to protect client choice in the foods that they're able to purchase with their CalFresh benefits. We do not want to see any restrictions on what people can buy at the grocery store. This also includes expanding options. Would love to see the ability to purchase a hot rotisserie chicken at a grocery store, for example, instead of having to get the cold one. Next slide, please. I mentioned that Farm Bill is probably the most important federal policy we're looking at. At the state level, this year we're really focused on CalFood. CalFood is a state pot of funding which allows food banks like us to purchase California-grown foods. We mostly use our allocation to buy milk and eggs and other items that are really challenging for us to source through our typical donation streams. During the pandemic, as a support program, the state of California bumped up CalFood benefits to about $60 million annually. That temporary increase, and that's statewide, that's for all food banks, not just us, unfortunately. That temporary increase is set to be reduced back down to only 8 million statewide after June of this year, unless this increase is made permanent. So we are definitely expect to hear from us on CalFood advocacy this year. We would, really love to see this amount preserved. Like Leslie mentioned at the beginning of our presentation today, we are still serving 2 times the number of people that we were serving prior to the pandemic. So losing this additional pot of funding would be a pretty significant blow to our food purchasing budget. Next slide, please. And finally, I'm just going to add a little more detail to the Food for All policy that Tracy has already mentioned. This is a state-funded program which supports individuals who are not eligible for the federal CalFresh benefit. So CalFresh is federally funded. The California Food Assistance Program is state-funded, but it mirrors the eligibility requirements and benefit amounts for this population that is not eligible for CalFresh because of their immigration status. Currently, there is an expansion set for seniors age 55 and older to go into effect in 2027, which would allow that population to be eligible for CFAP, but we are continuing to advocate for the inclusion of children and young adults so that all people who are excluded from CalFresh but still in need of assistance are able to access this benefit. And after me, we'll have Jenny talk about school and summer meals, and then finally Joan will wrap up with our food recovery work. But I'm going to hand it over to Jenny now. Thanks.
Thank you, Rachel. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Jenny Dang, and I'm the Policy and Community Advocate. Today, I'm going to be talking about 2 key nutrition programs that ensure students have the food they need to thrive: Universal School Meals and Summer EBT, also known as Sunbucks. So starting with school meals, California's Universal School Meals program has been a huge success in ensuring every child has access to free meals at school. However, to maximize its impact, we need to address barriers to access and sustainability at the local, state, and federal levels. We plan to continue to build upon our work from previous years, which includes at a local level, working with local school districts on solutions around time to eat for students. This is a particularly big focus for us as research shows that small changes such as having recess before lunch can make a big difference in ensuring students have proper time to finish their meals. Related to that, school meals cannot operate without school nutrition staff, and we will continue to support efforts to ensure that they are paid livable wages and benefits. At a state level, we are committed to advocating for continued investment in the Universal School Meals Funding Program to support school food services teams and ensure that they have the resources they need to provide nutritious meals through resources such as KIT funding. And lastly, we continue to push for Congress to pass a child nutrition reauthorization bill, which includes free school meals for all, making universal meals a national standard, as well as for the Community Eligibility Provision, or CEP, reimbursement multiplier to be increased so that more schools can afford to offer free meals without facing any financial strain. Moving on to Sunbucks. When the school year ends, so do school meals for millions of children, and that's why the launch of Sunbucks in 2024 was such a big game changer. California automatically enrolled nearly 5 million eligible children into the Sunbucks program, providing them with $120 per child for summer groceries. And this was through the months of June, July, and August, so about $40 per month. And yes. As for our policy priorities, we plan to continue monitoring implementation and improvements around Sunbucks. Going into 2025, CDSS is working on a Universal Benefits Application, or UBA, so that families who are not automatically certified can still apply and receive Sunbucks. And this is a really key step in making sure that no child falls between the cracks. We also plan to continue to support efforts to replace stolen benefits to ensure that families receive reimbursement for any lost benefits that they may have encountered. And that is all we have for school meals and Sunbucks. These programs are extremely critical because when kids don't have access to meals, they can't learn, grow, or reach their full potential, which is why our policy agenda focuses on expanding access and making sure that these programs work for all families. And yeah, thank you so much, and I'll pass it back to Rachel.
Thank you. First, a quick definition. KIT funds stand for Kitchen Infrastructure and Training Funds. That's California state funding for school meals. And we have been remiss in introducing our panelists for a presentation today. We just dove right in. We got excited. So we're really happy to have two speakers today to talk about challenges to CalFresh at the federal level and the local county response and perspective to those. First up, we have Daniel Little. He's the agency director for the Santa Clara County Social Services Agency. And then we also have Nancy Rodriguez, who's a human services manager for the San Mateo County Human Services Agency as well. So for today, we have just a couple of questions for each of them to answer, giving their perspective on how things are going in our local counties. And we are going to do this panelist style, so I'm going to have Daniel answer first, and then Nancy will go in and answer too. If we have time at the end, we'll take Q&A. If not, we'll hold questions until the end of the presentation today. Oh, Jenny, can you pop up the slide with the questions? Thank you. All right, I'm going to stop talking now. Daniel, could you please answer what challenges to CalFresh benefits do you see in this administration?
Thank you, Rachel, and good morning, everyone. It's good to be here. A very important topic, and I've enjoyed a lot of the information that's already been shared. So I'm the Social Service Agency Director for Santa Clara County. I think one of the primary challenges is really right now that we know that not all eligible residents within Santa Clara County are receiving benefits. So if we're already starting from that point, that anything where we have uncertainty around funding, any administrative changes that can change eligibility, we know that that's going to have a greater impact, and that's going to have a cumulative impact. And ultimately, we're going to have potentially have less families either accessing because of fear of what's going to happen, or just not having access, not having funding. And if I can go through a couple of programs specifically that I think what we're really watching, I think even the household eligibility concerns. So, CalFresh requires legal status, but households with citizen children may still receive benefits, even if the parents are undocumented. And I think because of fear of government action, I think it could have families really hesitant to reach out to us. And I think really the ongoing funding uncertainty, especially what we saw from this week, I think is just going to create additional challenges. So the CalFresh Employment and Training Program, that's a 50% federal funding match. We're currently preparing to initiate requests for government applications for third-party vendors. I think our fear is with the funding uncertainty that we're going to have limited interest in applying for that. So, that really goes across the gamut of many of our social services programs, specifically our food security programs, where that funding security right now is really creating a significant barrier.
Thank you. Nancy, do you have anything to add from San Mateo County's perspective?
So good morning. I'm Nancy. I'm the Human Services Manager over at San Mateo County for the Service Center and the CalFresh program. And unfortunately, with all the news that's out there, there's a lot of speculation about, how the program is going to be cut, if it's going to be eliminated. And so it really creates a lot of confusion across, our workforce, and it also creates confusion amongst our clients. And so we definitely see that it's going to be very challenging to convince people to say apply, right? And so we are definitely working some plans around, joining more efforts with our community-based organizations because there's fear. Of course, there's fear about, if I apply, what will happen to me? Is my information going to be shared? But more than that, do they trust us enough to provide us with that information? And so I know that you guys, are always out there in the forefront. And so we are definitely looking for ways to participate more with the CBOs to ensure that people that truly need the benefits, remain on the benefits and that they don't feel like, they can't reach out to us. Another item that we think is important is, going to the client versus just expecting the client to come to us. I think a lot of people, different places a little empty because people don't want to go out. People don't want to be in the community as much because they're exposing themselves. And so looking for ways to minimize the client's impact of coming into the office, but more of us looking for ways to be where they're at, whether that means, at the laundromat, whether that means, at a church or other organizations where they feel comfortable and they have that trust with that organization.
Thank you, Nancy. Going back to you, Daniel, what preparations is the county putting into place to address any changes or get the changes communicated out to participants?
Yeah, and that's so important. And I think Nancy kind of touched on this too, of just the uncertainty and the hesitation that people may feel like reaching out, even though we are a county government. I think in the public view, a government is a government, and I think there's connection from us to the federal. And so we're using as many avenues to send out information. So our own public website, social media, mass messaging, just to make sure that we continue to get the message out. I think the other component that we've really had to try to factor in is figuring out how we can engage individuals where they feel is the safest and the most comfortable. So I think that means doing a lot of outreach and communication with our community-based organizations, our first 5 family resource centers, to see how we can get information and connection further out into the community, so that we can get individuals connected to resources and supports in a way that they feel safe. And on the back end, we can still do the same work, but they're not having to come to a county site to do that.
Yeah, I definitely hear that for our work as well. So thank you, Daniel. Nancy, what about for San Mateo?
So some of the things that we are trying to do in our county is preparing our staff to be knowledgeable enough to provide some information to our clients. So we have been taking some trainings through legal aid in regards to know your rights and items like that, so that if the clients were to ask us, we are able to either redirect them to legal aid or other community agencies that can help them with their immigration questions. But we're also at the same time looking at gaps within San Mateo County and an understanding, where is the higher need. And so part of our strategic plan is to target those areas. And so we are looking at working in the north, on the coast, areas where we find that there's, participation gaps. We're going to start there, but that doesn't mean that we're not going to look at other areas as such as the south or central. But we're definitely doing a little bit more in those areas to ensure that the people that need the services are able to access the services. We do at the service center accept applications over the phone. We initiate the application, we do the interviews, and so there are methods for the clients to be able to apply without having to step into our office at all. Our outreach team also is available to go out to these different areas and take applications, and so we are trying to do our best to be present in the community. Definitely, there's a lot of questions around, what's going to happen. And so we really don't have the answers to those, but we're definitely working with what we know right now.
Yeah, that is the challenge. Like everything's changing. It's hard to keep up. Daniel, for Santa Clara County, what resources would you suggest people use right now to help people who are concerned about these changes?
Yeah, I mean, as far as the benefit resources, we've really tried to make sure that everybody's aware that everything is still in place that was previously in place. So the same benefit levels right now, and making sure that we're getting that message out. I think our county put together some actual set aside funding to help with a lot of the legal support that's going to be required. So I think that's important. And I think Nancy hit on something that's really important that I didn't touch on before. It's really providing a lot of these resources and knowledge to our staff, because they're going to be the some of the initial contacts. So making sure they're aware of where to direct people to the county site to get know your rights and to get all of those components, making sure all of our lobbies have that information readily available. And really, again, just working with our community-based organization, our partners who are potentially going to be interacting with families first, that they know all of this and they can help, ease anxiety, make sure just people get still connected to the resources that they deserve and that they need.
Thank you. Nancy, is there anything you'd like to share from San Mateo County?
Yes, there's one item. So our Office of Community Affairs has created a booklet, and it's an immigrant resource guide that, they certainly take when they do outreach, but we in the outreach team also have the booklet available for clients to take during our offsites. And so we've made sure that we have these available and that we are able to provide this. Again, we always know that we're not the experts in, legal resource or legal immigration. So we definitely refer them to legal aid and other agencies that are listed in our immigrant guide. And so I think that just being able to give the clients, these additional resources is very beneficial for them.
That's really great. I think in the materials after the event today, we'll try to send some links out to all of the attendees today, so you have that information as well. Thank you. We are a little short on time, but there's one question that came through the chat that I wanted to pop over to you all. In the event that federal budget cuts are enacted, what do you think your counties would prioritize preserving as it relates to CalFresh and CalFresh support and benefits? And whoever wants to answer first can take it.
Yeah, and it's a very good question, but also a very difficult question. I'll try not to speak for the county executive. I do know that the county is committed to continuing to provide for some of the most vulnerable within our community, and some of the uncertainty of all of this really ties to seeing what the state of California is also going to do, which will then, I think, trigger what the counties have to do as a result of that. So, ultimately, I think we still want to make sure that again, some of the most vulnerable that are key to the clients that a social service agency supports, that they're still able to get services. What that looks like and what those services look like, I think we'll have to kind of let some of this play out and see again what the federal government decides and then what the state does in response.
I agree 100%. Our county would love to secure benefits for everyone that's eligible. But definitely we would have to go back and determine, which ones we are able to fund versus which ones we're not. I think that we are very lucky to live in California, where California always thinks about everyone and always has special programs that helps folks that are in need. So I am hopeful that California would come up with some type of plan that would help and continue to help those that are in need.
So we are very fortunate to live in a state that cares about all of its residents for sure. Daniel, Nancy, thank you so much for providing this information from each of your counties. I know this is a hot, hot topic and things are constantly evolving and there's chaos and confusion everywhere. So I just really appreciate you kind of grounding us in where we are right now and what we know. If anyone has other questions for Daniel and Nancy, if you can please pop them in the Q&A box. We are going to move on with the last couple sections of our presentation today, and we'll try to get to them at the end. Thank you. And I believe I'm handing it off to Joan now. Thanks.
Thank you, Rachel. Hi, I'm Joan Sanborn. I work in our food sourcing department that brings all of the food from the various sources into the food bank. As Leslie mentioned at the beginning of our presentation today, more than 60% of what we distribute is fresh produce. That's recovered food also. This slide shows all of the different buckets and sources of food that we collect. And the produce you can see is the biggest piece of the pie that comes to us through the California Association of Food Banks Farm to Family program. And that represents about 80% of our fresh produce that we distribute. Food Rescue, the orange piece of the pie in the top left, that is more important to ever now. It's how we are able to sustain ourselves financially and environmentally. And Grocery Rescue is an area that's really grown due in part to the passage of SB 1383, which requires food generators like grocery stores to donate eligible food. Our organization has worked in food rescue for more than 10 years, so this isn't new to us, but the scale of what we're doing has significantly increased with the passage of SB 1383. So next slide. So our grocery rescue food sourcing is important for the planet too, something that's kind of new for us to talk about, but with the 93 million pounds of food we rescued last year, it really equivalents to 39 metric tons of carbon dioxide and over its 1.6 billion gallons of water. You can see the equivalent of that in how many swimming pools we could fill, how many passenger cars we could take off the road. So next slide. So this shows the two paths of how we do this work in partnership in the community. Path one is 80% of what we do in the grocery stores. We partner with our local partners, some of who are in this meeting today. And we couldn't do this work without them. They go to the store, they work with the store, they pick it up, weigh it, report it, distribute it. The larger volume donations, our food bank drivers will pick that up and kind of bring it through our warehouse. At the end of the day, it all gets out for distribution. So to support this growth, we provide the agency partners and able to do this work with infrastructure such as vehicles, storage supplies, other materials to safely recover and distribute. Right now, we have over 120 of our partner agencies picking up 740 times per week from these food generators. We could not do this work without them. We calculated that came out to 38,000 donation pickups last year. They do the amazing work. They recover, like I said, the majority of the food. We do support them when we can with vehicles, cold storage, and food safety training. Although we're not currently planning on working with Tier 2 prepared food donors, we are working closely with each of our counties to create guides and resources to prepare our partners for this. Sorry, yeah, here we go. Yeah, Tier 2. There's a lot of pickups. I think I already covered all of that. So let's, in the interest of time, move on to the next. No, I guess that is the last slide. Long-term, nonprofit organizations are taking a heavy lift to expand this. Volunteers, staff to establish the infrastructure needed to operate a food rescue program, and also to help the food generators maintain compliance with this state law. So we're asking for further investment specifically set aside for nonprofit food recovery organizations like ourselves and our partners who are doing this work. And I'm going to give it back to Tracy to close this out.
Thank you so much, Joan. And we really appreciate you all being here today. Of course, we're going to end with an ask. So if we go to the next slide, you know, we are all going to have to do this work together. And so for our cities, you know, our program managers will be assessing all of our different regions, coming to work with you to understand food access issues in your community. We may need space for a new distribution. Perhaps you can be contributing to some of the funding and infrastructure to support your community. And really consider the food bank as your partner in figuring out how to get access to food in your city. In terms of our counties, we have great collaboration with our counties. We need to continue to all work together with our CORS, our EANs, and all of our other agencies and sites to ensure that we have that appropriate access and funding for the food system, and that we continue to invest in the root cause solutions: housing, income protections, immigrant rights. At the state level, our biggest ask is we need that Cal Food money. Please pass the Cal Food money. Very important, especially with the threatened reduction of federal resources. And Cal Food is such a win where it supports California farmers. It goes right back into our communities, and then it helps food insecure people get the food that they need. And then at the federal level, we're all going to have to be advocating for this farm bill. You know, we know that it's targeted for work requirements, for restrictions about what the money can be spent on, and for reductions in the amount of benefits. And so we're all going to need to fight back together against that. And we need to invest in proven anti-poverty initiatives such as the Earned Income Tax Credit, the Child Tax Credit, WIC, Senior Nutrition Program, and other nutrition programs. So we hope that you will be willing to work with us. We're going to try and find ways to share advocacy actions with you more broadly and more consistently so that we can be acting together. And we really look forward to learning what you're seeing in the community and how we can act together to support our community. So thank you so much for coming today. Special thanks to Leslie and Joan for being here, to Daniel Little and Nancy Rodriguez from our counties, and to Rachel and Jenny for making it all happen. So thank you all so much and have a really great day. If you have any additional questions, you know how to reach us. You can just respond to the invite that you just joined, and we'll be happy to set up meetings with you, respond by email, or any other way that's helpful.